Okay, Podsters, this is it. This is your tipping point, your moment to take action or live with never knowing what could have been. We all have that thing that we know we are meant to do that scares us, that we're not sure we can do, and that we know we need a little help doing. My Do the Thing Fall Retreat is happening October 13th through 15th in where else? Cape Cod, in the tranquil seaside town of Truro, where I've hand selected a beach house for 9 like-minded women to get together and do the thing. You already know that there's a life waiting for you on the other side of this thing. And this powerful, intimate 2.5-day workshop is exactly what you need. If you don't do it now, you probably never will. Don't live with regret. Do the thing. Click the link, fill out the very brief application. Let's hop on a call because I want to make sure it's the right fit for you. Together, let's do the thing. Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast. I'm Nancy Medoff, keynote speaker, best-selling author, executive coach, and equity evangelist who literally wrote the book on women in confidence.
And I'm Beth Knaus, creative copywriter who works with female entrepreneurs who are done putting safe and general content out there and ready to walk the fine line between honoring their bold voices and perspectives and honoring their professionalism. We are on fire and on a mission to inspire and empower you, and who are we kidding? The world, to speak up, stand out, and get your seat at the table. If you're looking for straight talk and a weekly shot of confidence, you've landed in the right place.
Beth and I met while collaborating on my #1 bestseller, Unmute Yourself and Speak Up to Stand Out. We hit it off and we knew right away that we needed to keep these important conversations going so that women around the globe will speak up and stop building our own glass ceiling. So here we are, coming at you weekly with a perfect blend of realistic strategies, actionable tools, and real life stories to bring these important and somewhat controversial ideas to life. Doing so with humor, kindness, and the occasional shenanigans.
Get ready to feel empowered and inspired to speak up, to stand out, and to build your confidence toolkit. Note to men or women who are not working in a professional capacity, we see you too, and we promise you the conversations here will inspire you as well. So buckle up, folks, because here we go. And we're back, everyone.
Oh, I like hearing Beth say that. Awesome.
Yeah, it's the spring. We're almost in spring. So I'm thinking, let's change it up, man. Change it up. We got a good one today, Beth. What are we talking about? I am really excited about this because, official place to find out anything on the TikTok. I saw a video a while. We've been talking about kin keeping back and forth for a little bit and just trying to figure out where it would fit in for us to talk about it to best benefit the Podster audience. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about kin keeping today. And so I go to do some research, and this was very interesting to me. And then we'll discuss what kin keeping is. And then I'll shush and I'll give you, Nancy, a chance to speak. 30 seconds only. So first I went on and I found an article in Psychology Today that talked about kin keeping as this thing, which, all right, let me do the definition first. That makes sense to do that. So the definition of kin keeping is the social role usually assigned to the middle-aged woman of promoting and protecting relationships between family members. Now, that's a very general definition. It originated in the 60s when, if you think about what was middle age in the 60s, 35 to 40, right? So that was just really kind of, wow. And I wrote the time of casseroles, Jell-O molds, and potlucks, which I think very much ties into like family gatherings and things like that. But, the underlying piece of it is that it's unpaid labor. It's unseen, subconscious work a lot of the time, like remembering birthdays and sending cards and doling out information and, kind of managing relationships like the backstage crew, right? But what happens with the backstage crew? The people who get all the kudos generally are the people in the performance. So it's often not acknowledged. So when I went online, Psychology Today had this, nice article about, oh, it's great, for people who are the kin keepers, right? And if you think about it, kin being relatives and keeping people connected, which is easier and harder today in a number of ways, depending on where people are and technology and blah, blah. And it's important if you are consciously choosing to be the kin keeper, right? Whereas Fortune 500, I pulled up this article and it was like, this is taxing, it's stressful, it's affecting people mentally, physically, at their jobs. And it was just, I found it really intriguing to go to those two different sources and hear this pushback in two different ways about kin keeping. You're on, Nancy.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Great introduction, great definition, great viewpoint. So what happens often, Podsters, is Beth will come to me and say, hey, let's talk about this. This is a new term I've been hearing. And then I'll look it up. I'll be like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that even exists. Like, really, what even is this? Like, what, you see this on the TikTok? I say it a little nicer than that. And lo and behold, every time, couple weeks later, boom, it's exploding. Quiet quitting, tall poppy syndrome, kin keeping. So you're a trailblazer, Beth.
That's right.
So, I wasn't hot on it because I was like, what is this? Like, is this the, and now I am, and let me tell you why. So, at first I was like, is this the woman taking on the responsibility of doing everything and making all the plans? I thought it meant making all the plans, like making all the travel arrangements, making all the, home management arrangements. And I'm like, yeah, that's not news, right? Like that's just how women have been socialized. And then I found out what it really is. And yes, so, Beth gave a great definition. And one of the definitions I saw is that it's an invisible emotional workload. Right. So it's an invisible workload, and it also takes an emotional toll on women. And I'm going to bring a perspective about how it doesn't help the men. So it hurts women's mental health, performance, and it is very, very real. I didn't know what it was called. I only know that I experienced it. So in my family, I would find that I was the one making plans with all of my husband's family. I would call his mother. I would call his sister. I would call my stepson. I would call I was the one always making plans. And then I thought about it and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I the one making these plans? First of all, it's his family, and who I love and like to spend time with. But I have very little tolerance for making plans and not being able to make plans quickly and execute on them quickly. It's character flaw. I know this. So it would be back and forth, and how many people are going, and where are we going? What about this time? And this one would call this one, and it trigger. So I finally said to him, I'm going to ask that any plans that are with your family, you manage, and any plans that are with my family, I manage. And it has been a game changer. I feel this. I feel what these articles are saying about the invisible mental workload. Like, on top of everything else that I have going on, I'm like, okay, and now we got to make sure that this one's picking up this one, and we're going to this place, and we're doing this thing. And then on my side of the family, I have to make sure this and this and this. And I'm like, whoa, time out. So we agreed to do that, and it's been a game changer for me personally.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good. That's good.
Yeah.
And also, let me look at my notes here. Okay, so here's this is interesting, because I started like really peeling back the onion, if you will. I would be doing him a disservice if I was the one always making the plans and always calling for the happy birthdays and always picking up the birthday cards. He finds joy in choosing birthday cards for his grandkids. So if I'm the one doing it and all he's doing is sending it, I'm taking him away from that. And I believe that oftentimes men, they'll let the relationships fall away, and the wife takes over the relationships, or takes over managing the relationships, and they lose that connection, or it's not as strong of a bond. And I think that impacts them. And I think that's why oftentimes men, after their wives pass on and go to the other world, they follow them shortly after, because they haven't nurtured these relationships. That's it. It was all with the wife.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy.
And they don't know how to organize a gathering or a social event or a place where they would pull people together that they need to be around. Right?
Yeah. Don't know, or pretend they don't know. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. Or maybe, they're a little overwhelmed by the concept because you know what? It takes a lot.
It does take a lot. Yeah, I really think it's interesting. And I wonder why. It's so funny because I remember thinking this for years. And I've been like, why am I the default on this? Like, what is even happening here?
Right.
And I wonder if it's because in the past, in the olden days, women didn't work and they would stay home. So the men would be out working. So the women had the time and the bandwidth, in theory. I would argue if you were raising children, you probably had less bandwidth than whoever was going off to make the money. But, I wonder if that's how it started.
Yeah. Right. And I think about like my mother and my grandmother, like the longest phone cords in the house were in the kitchen, right? Because they were always on the phone while they were there doing work, because there weren't 500 TV channels and 6,000 podcasts and, cell phones and TikTok and all the things that we can choose to partake in today rather than picking up a phone and talking to someone.
That's so funny.
Right?
So for those of you who I think there might be listeners who maybe don't know what we're talking about. So there used to be a phone, not a mobile phone. It was attached to the wall, and then the wires would go through your home up to the telephone pole. But it would have a ridiculously long cord. Like you could wrap the cord around yourself like 10, 20 times. So that you could take the phone everywhere. And remember, you would walk around the kitchen and you would like try not to knock over a casserole dish or whatever.
Sure. You'd be lifting that cord over all the things on the table with like jump rope.
That's so
and then it would get all tangled. Oh, it was horrible. And then you were a teenager, you wanted privacy, and you'd be like, please, can this thing stretch so I can just make it to the bathroom and shut the door so no one will listen?
The closet. Yeah.
The closet. Happiest day of my life, getting my own phone in my room, my own extension.
Oh, did you have one of the princess phones? Remember those? They called them a princess phone. Should we go down that road? They called them a princess phone. Remember? The ones that were curved shaped?
I did not have that.
Princess phone. Because if you have a phone in your bedroom, you're a princess.
Yeah, princess was never a title I had in my house.
Me either. Trust me. Yep. That's funny. So the other piece of this, Beth and I are both doing a lot of talking and work on the glass ceiling, and I'm really doing a lot of research on how or if human resources plays a role in this glass ceiling and making it shatterproof. And in my research, what I found was, with the training and resources available to women, so we now know how women are socialized. We now know that things are different for women. So what are we doing about it? And this is very timely, and I think I'm going to bring it up in this speech that I have at the end of the month. If you know that this is a real thing, and you know that it impacts women's bandwidth, and in some cases mental health, or it's just extra work, how can we not make it how can we minimize the effect is the question.
Well, so one of the things that kept coming up, because I went back and watched those, the young woman did like 2 or 3 TikTok videos on this because everybody kept asking her for more information. And the reason she started this was because she was in a class for gender studies. And this was something that came up in her gender studies class. When she first posted the video, she had 1,000 views, and it grew very quickly to over 7 million views.
7 million views on this?
Uh-huh. of the podcast, of the TikTok video. So one of the things that people kept saying is that it's not necessarily that you have to abolish kin keeping. Like we said, some people consciously choose to do it and it's valuable, but it needs to be acknowledged when it's happening. And that, like if you host a family thing, you run around ragged, if you get to sit down and enjoy your meal or your time at all, your mascara is running, your hair's all over the place, and nobody says anything. Everybody just eats their meal. But, like if, your Uncle Harry goes in the kitchen and like rolls the crescent rolls and manages to put them in the oven, take them out without burning, he wants everyone to know that he did the crescent rolls. So, the issue isn't necessarily that your Uncle Harry wants everyone to know. It's that your mother, who just spent hours in the kitchen, wants to hide the fact that she did this work. And so not only do other people have to acknowledge it, we have to get comfortable with receiving credit where credit is due. And saying, you know what, this is a lot of work, but I love to have this event and I'm really happy to do it to bring everybody together. And I'll sleep well tomorrow.
So instead of saying, oh, it was no big deal, I want to make sure I understand. Oh, you know what, it's my pleasure. It's no big deal, right? It's a labor of love or whatever. Oh, God. You're saying we should say, yeah, you know what, it is a lot of work and it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. It's an investment in family and I'm happy to do it. Right?
I like it. Right. If you are really happy to do it.
Right. And I'm always happy to host a holiday because I've had some holidays. I host a lot of holidays and I've had some come and go where I don't host them. And then I'm like disappointed that we didn't have anything. And I like the control of it. There's something about it. Yes.
So two things you just said. As you were just speaking, I wrote a note. Is it, quote, we are taking over? Is it, I make the plans with the family because he doesn't do it on my time frame. He doesn't do it when I want him to do it, and he doesn't do it the way I want him to do it, right? So that's the other thing too, is if you're gonna push back and say this is something that you're responsible for, and I see this a lot with women, myself included. If you're going to say, I need you to do this, then let them do it and let them do it how they're going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I do, and I have my own, like baggage of why I like to control what happens in the kitchen, but I like holidays to go a certain way. I like them to be abundant and fun and all of that stuff. And I know that I can make that happen. But it also makes me think, so we, have talked often about generational things. And if you go back 2 or 3 generations, was it one of the few things that you were allowed to have a leadership role in?
That's interesting for the women that are listening. Is it one of the things where you were allowed to be in charge or you were allowed to step up?
You're the expert. You're the expert in the kitchen. Or at family gatherings or organizing or all that sort of stuff, which, hey, it's important, but it's important for it not to be taxing you and affecting every other part of your life if, you're not having a good time kin keeping.
And does being the expert make you feel good about yourself? And does it make you feel good about yourself? Does the feeling that it makes you feel good about yourself outweigh the feeling of resentment at having to do it, or the feeling of whatever mental bandwidth you have to spend on it? The other thing you mentioned that I laughed because it was in my notes, Uncle Harry, right, when he puts the croissants in the oven, right? So what I wrote was, you don't get a medal when you do it, right? That and it's funny, and it's funny, and it's it's meme worthy around. Okay, so if I asked you to do it or to take it over and you do it, great. There's probably not going to be a parade about it. Maybe there will be, but I'm not going to organize the parade. If you want to organize the parade, organize the parade. It's just funny.
Yeah, that's right. Because I know that organizing takes a lot of work. So Uncle Harry. Right.
Now I have to organize the parade for Uncle Harry. Right. Anyway, I think it's interesting. And I think it's interesting to look at it in the context of mental health, the pandemic, and women being wicked much disproportionately affected by the childcare, by taking care of the children during the
Yes.
pandemic. So is the kin keeping hurting advancement? Is the kin keeping hurting advancement because you're spending, let's say you're the kin keeper for your family, you're spending, or I'm spending, whoever is spending all this time and energy. Remember, we said it's an emotional drain, or it's emotionally taxing, hidden, invisible, so that you can't focus on work, so you don't advance as quickly. I don't know.
Right.
Don't know.
I think anything that's draining you like that, that's invisible and you're not talking about and no one is noticing. Yeah, that's the worst type of taxing, right?
Yeah. I think this is really interesting. I think it's really interesting.
I do
So
too.
how do you stop kin keeping? Or, yeah, do you want to stop kin keeping? Some people like it.
Some people like it. So how do you moderate kin keeping and do it to the extent that it's satisfying you and not draining you?
Well, again, I say in my house, I love my in-laws and that side of the family. It is extremely draining for me to have to manage it because of my situation.
Yes.
I run a business. There's a lot going on. So for me, I prefer that people whose names start with P all work out the plans, and this is literally what I have said. People whose names start with M all make the plans, and it has been amazing.
Yeah, good. That's great.
Right?
I think that's what it is that you have to figure out where's the easiest place for you to start to delegate control, right? To relinquish a little control. What things are you willing to say, you know what? I don't want to do this part of it. This part is really hard for me. And to be honest, for people out there who are in business, this is like the same way you have to let go of anything you hire a service provider for, right? So as a writer, somebody has to let go and let me give it my best shot if they don't feel that they're doing it. But sometimes it's really hard. Or, you hire a VA, but then you're like, oh, I don't want to give that work to the VA. Well, what are you hiring them for? Like, you have to learn to do the things you do best that fill you up the most and drain you the least, and then start to let go of the other things if you can, I think, when it comes to kin keeping.
Love it. Kin keeping. Podsters, let us know. Real? Is it just the term du jour? Is it, are we making a big deal out of it? Are we just tough? Like what? I don't know.
Right.
We'd like to hear. I think it's interesting.
I do
and
too.
do we think it has the potential, I know it has the potential to impact my mental health because of bandwidth issues. And it's funny because one of the women that listens, I think I used to say this to her, Meredith, hi Meredith, who listens. I used to say to her at work, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with this right now. Like that's what I used to say. It used to make her crazy. Anyway, I don't know so I know it affects my bandwidth. I don't know that it affects my career trajectory, but I think that's something that's worth thinking about. I'm not ready to commit to that statement, but I think it's worth thinking about it.
In my daughter's words, she would say, this is above my pay grade. Be like, can you peel these potatoes? That's above my pay grade. She'll say,
well, you just got promoted and the peeler's right over there. Congratulations. That's awesome. I love it. All right, cool. Another interesting conversation.
That's right. Stirring the pot.
Woo! So look at the kin keeping, because if you want to unmute yourself and speak up to stand out, I forgot. I wanted to work this in here. So I think we mentioned a couple weeks ago that Unmute Yourself at Home will be coming out.
That's right.
I don't want to say shortly, but eventually this year. If you would like to be interviewed for Unmute Yourself and Speak Up to Stand Out at Home, I'm going to put a link in the show notes it'll take you to a form, and you can give me some information and we can hop on the phone and start talking about stuff, because I think so we're going to get a lot of feedback on this because this is big. This might be bigger than the original.
That's right.
Cool. All right. So we are
We're all
out.
set. That's
Yeah,
right.
we're out. All right. Good. Okay, Podsters, we will see you all soon. Spring will be here, I think, by the time.
Oh, thank goodness. I cannot wait.
For those of you who are outside the US or maybe in a warm state, winter is really tough in New England. It's tough.
And this has been a fairly mild winter.
Mild but cold.
Yeah, but when we get to March, we're just like, it's enough.
Yeah, it is. Like you see one little crocus coming up and you're like, woo, spring is here.
That's right.
All right, spring has sprung and we will see you all later.
See ya.
That's a wrap, Podsters. If you were thinking of someone as you were listening to this, share it. If you nodded along and even shouted out a couple of yes, leave us a review. Please, please, please. If you want to make sure you don't miss next week's episode, hit that follow button.
And you can find us everywhere. And if you would like to learn more about us and exactly what we do, take a look in the show notes for our deets. See you
next week.
Podsters.